Someone sent this to me, and even though this is kind of fun and whimsical and, you know, almost like for a casual summer day or for a kid, the possibilities are endless. Not only is this easy network pattern possible for the very beginning wire wrappers who can almost do very little but make a simple loop, but as well as working for kids and working for something casual, you could use really nice beads and crystals and design a very intricate, interesting pattern and make this as gorgeous as suited for a bride or bridesmaids. A couple of things you want to remember. Do a simple drawing of your pattern. Absolutely, this is going to save you a lot of trouble and make it so much easier. And this is really the only other rule. When you pick the necklace up, it's going to bunch together like this, and you're going to say, oh no, it's not laying flat. But that's not reality, because when you stretch it back out and let it hang, not only do you have to put it on a flat surface, but you also have to let gravity take effect to test if it's laying flat. And you also have to spread out the two sides at the angle that it's going to hang for a person wearing it to test. Now, as you can see on this one's pretty good. This one, it's a little wonky there because that piece is a little too long. But other than that, it sits pretty well. It's following most of the rules of the pattern. What you don't want to do is have parts that would stick up like this, kind of like if you wanted to do cat ears, because if there's nothing connecting to these points here, then when this hangs vertically, these two triangle parts are going to flop over. And the same thing is, you don't want to go out too far like this with nothing holding it. Now, if you're always going to make a connection going to the necklace, then you'll be fine, probably. Although if you go this way, go down too far and then make a connection, the way it hangs on the neck, that might flip over. So it's always good to test it as you're making it on a person, on a model, on a mannequin, whatever. But other than that, the possibilities and the patterns are endless. You can also hang dangly parts in each little area if you want to make it even more fancy. If you like any of these patterns, feel free to pause the video and screenshot them. When you're sketching a pattern, first start with pencil and get a sense of the general shape you want. And it doesn't matter at this point if you make rounded parts, even though we're going to end up with straight links. And don't be afraid to go over multiple lines and kind of sculpt it with the pencil as you're going. That's kind of what sketching is. There's no one hard, definite line that you're married to. You just kind of get a feel for the shape you want, and if it's going the way you don't want, just take your eraser and, you know, don't be afraid to start over 3, 4, 5 times. But you want to make this the actual size. You're going to continuously lay your pieces on this paper to measure it, to make sure this is the size of the actual necklace. So if you want to get a real feel for how it's going to sit on someone, you can stop every now and then, take your fingers, kind of go like this, kind of get the shape and the size of it, and then lift your fingers, hold them up to your own chest, look down, think about how that's going to fit. Or if you have a person or a mannequin or a model in front of you, go like this and hold it up to them. And make sure the person knows what you're doing ahead of time, because if you take your fingers like this and make them all claw-like and then approach somebody's chest like that, especially if you make a little menacing grin like might tend to get them a little creeped out, but I don't know, I've never tried it, so, you know, see what works for you. Once you have the general shape down, you want to break it into sections that are going to be straight. And don't try to make it too complicated on your first one. Don't try to make like 17 links going all the way across to make a curve perfect. Just for this one, I think, am I going to do 2 or 3? I think I'm just going to do 2 across like that. 2 across like that, and then 3 across like that. I think that will be good. And now we'll do the inner links and see how that looks. So we have one like this. I like that. It's simple, but it's elegant. And for our first one, I think that's a great size, great shape. What you want to do next is take a ruler and get a general sense for the size. Now you can skip this part, you can eyeball it, and I very likely would eyeball it myself, but it could help if you really want to get it precise. Try to get a sense of each line. How long do you really want to make it? Now I'm leaving spaces at the ends of these lines because there's going to be links, so always keep that in mind. The spaces I leave are almost a whole ½ inch or a centimeter. But this, I think, is going to be about from here to here, 1 3/4 inches. You know, that might even, yeah, that's about right. So I have my 1 3/4 inch section right here. And then naturally I'm going to want to balance it right here. Another 1 3/4 section. Make that very definite, like that. And then these going to be the same or longer? These are going to be probably about the same. I'm going to do 1 3/4. And now you're never going to be 100% precise with this unless you sit there for hours, and it doesn't matter because the beads, the size of the beads is precise. The size of the beads you pick. As long as you pick the same number of beads for each section, even if your drawing isn't perfect, the necklace will fall into a symmetrical piece where everything will line up. So the only other thing you could do wrong is make variously hugely different size loops, but even that isn't even going to show. You'd have to really make drastically different size loops. So I wouldn't even worry about that. This one, I think, yeah, I'll just stick to the 1 3/4 for this one too, which means over here 1 3/4. See how I made that one kind of shorter? So now this ruler will fix it a little bit, stretch it out a little bit. This section here, I think I want to be about 1 1/2. It's a little shorter. And this section in the middle, I think I want it to be about 1 1/4. And this section, again, is going to be 1 1/2. All right, now these little ones are going to be 3/4 of an inch. All right, now that part's done, you want to pick your beads. Now you can go large, medium, small. You can have it tapered out and come back, or you can do beads all the same size. Also, you want to pick your wire. I suggest 18 gauge. 18 is going to be the strongest that you can still work with. But if you're using tiny beads, especially 4mm, you got to test them. The 18 often doesn't fit. Sometimes even 6mm beads won't fit with 18 gauge. So test all your beads before you decide on the wire. 20 gauge will work. 20 gauge, if you make your little loops tight, will be fine. 18 gauge is the strongest, 20 gauge is a close second. So that's what I suggest. Then you want to pick your beads. I suggest a combination, definitely 6mm you want to be the driving force, I would say, which are about the size of green pea. Also, you might want to throw in 8mm, which are about the size of a chickpea or garbanzo bean, and 4mm, which are about the size of the head of a pin. Now, and try to get a colored pattern that you like. Don't go crazy with it. Just find something that works. I went for pink and purple. I have mostly, actually all amethyst here, and then several different types of cat's eye. It's kind of a rose quartz color, although all three of these are slightly different types of bead. And then I might use these mother of pearl barrel beads if I have to. So this is what I'm working with. And I might not even use half of these, but I have the pink and purple in all 3 sizes each, along with the barrel beads, which are kind of a stretched out 6mm. So let's do this. Next, we're actually going to lay the beads down on top of here. We're gonna have a lot of rolling. I haven't figured out how to stop that yet. The good news is you don't have to sit them here forever on the entire necklace. You can just do 1 strand at a time, and then you can take your marker and write down what that's going to be. And once you got this section, you also have this section, and you also have every other section that's the same length to keep it easy. This one's going to leave me having to do a lot of purple and pink, and that's just too, the pattern alternating that much is just a bit much. So I think I'm actually going to throw in the barrel beads here to break it up a little with a 3rd color. Now I'm having second thoughts. I kind of like the little beads better, and it's okay. to go back and forth a little bit. Just don't drive yourself crazy. Eventually just make a decision and go with it, and don't expect it to be 100% perfect. I like this too, with the little tiny purple ones at the end, but that makes it too long, and we got to stick true to our lengths, or maybe we don't. It's up to you. I'm going to go with this here, and that means this is going to be a little longer than my measurements. So what I'm going to do is just let each of these lengths be a tiny bit longer than the measurement, and then it'll just expand the whole thing slightly enough that it should all work out. Now, 18 gauge does not work on all the beads I picked, so 20 gauge it is. So start by taking a length that is the same length as the beads you just lined up, only give yourself like an extra centimeter on each side. Maybe all the way up to an inch on each side to be safe. Once you get really good at it, you can cut it a little tighter to try to maximize your wire use, but in the beginning, give yourself some extra. Don't try to be too skimpy. And then we're going to start, take the round nose, about a third of the way from the tip. Pinch it and then give yourself about half an inch, and then bend it at a right angle like that. Then you're going to grab it, again, about a third of the way down, right on the end like this, and roll it backwards from the way you just bent it. And your first ones are going to be wonky. It doesn't matter. Reposition, reposition. If you need to go down lower on the pliers to get it tighter, that's fine. But you want to end up with a little loop just like this. And again, you can still play with it after you make it, but you want it to basically be about like that, and you want there to be no space in there. So I'm going to pull that one a little tighter. And that is pretty good. Now just stack the beads on the other side. Now get them nice and tight, and holding them firm and tight, you want to make another right angle against your last bead like that. Make it as tight as you can. And then this time, we're going to cut, instead of just measuring, we're going to cut off about the same amount that we need for a loop. And you'll get used to what makes the right amount for a loop for you. But for me, it's a little bit less than half an inch. And I'm going to make it a little bigger on this one just so you guys can see. And then, again, about 1/3 of the way down the pliers, grab it on the end, and I start to roll it. I don't want to hurt my wrists. Use good body mechanics, so I reposition and I roll it again. And if it looks like that little tip is not coming right into the crevice there, I'll grab it with a thinner part of the tips and make a tighter loop. And then sometimes it's 5 or 6 movements. Once I get it, I kind of pinch it this way, make sure it's nice and tight, roll it again, pinch it, and then I take both ends like this and I make sure they line up straight. Look at it from different angles, and it's going to be a little wobbly because this is 20 gauge and because it's a fairly long piece. It'll strengthen up once you put them all together, but as best I can, I want it to be as straight as possible right now. So I'm just going to mess with it a little bit. And if your beads are sliding all the way up and down, you might want to cut your loop and redo it to make it tighter. But again, don't go crazy. Mine are, see, there's a little bit of vibration in there, and that doesn't bother me. Now we lay it down and do our next one. When I'm starting out, I will play with this little loop quite a bit. I will try to make it as good as possible. If I don't like it, I will cut it off, try again. I'll unroll it, see if I can roll it tighter. Maybe sometimes I'll clip the little end. So this is a good exercise to get really good at making tight, nice little round loops. Again, don't drive yourself crazy, but do take some care with this, because once you get it down, you're going to be making loops forever. If you do any kind of wire wrapping or jewelry making, just making loops is just something that should come as easy to you as breathing. So, put a little effort into that part. Sometimes a longer bead fits, but then it gets stuck at a little juncture there. So you want to straighten out the wire and also roll the bead as you're trying to get it down. Don't force it too much. You can crack the bead, but if you can roll it and straighten the wire and get it down, then you're good. If it's really, really, really stuck, you might need to pick a different bead. An alternate way to make it even stronger and actually fancier is, especially with 20 gauge, make your little beginning loop like you did the first time, stack your beads, and then do the right angle against the last bead, make it tight. This time you're going to grab it with the round nose pliers about a third of the way up like this, make the loop around the pliers, roll it in tight until it's about the same size as the other loop, and then holding it tight like that, wrap around like this, pull tight, and then in a diagonal pattern wrap across the bead, and then in the crevice behind it, across the bead, in the crevice behind it, across, behind, across, behind, across, behind. Of course, you're going to take a longer piece of wire for this, if I didn't mention it sooner. Behind, across, and when you finally get to the end, you're going to wrap it around that little tiny top loop, cut it with just the tiniest little tab to tuck in, and then tuck in with your flat nose, tuck in that tiny little tab right there, press it so it kind of disappears up against the wire, and tuck it, pinch it a couple times, make sure it's not sticking out to scratch anyone. Now you have a fancier and actually stronger link. So that's another way to do it. You don't have to do it that way, but it's a fun option. Now all you need is jump rings and chain and you're done. I suggest 6 or 8 millimeter jump rings. See which works best for you. I'm going to start with some 6 and see if that works. Remember to always open your jump ring sideways like a door. Never pull it apart like that because you'll warp it. Always sideways and then close it sideways. I'm expecting to link every link with just one jump ring, no matter how many strands connect. But if you find you want to add 2 or 3 to make it smooth out better, there's no rules. Whatever works for you. And then a jump ring here, and some chunky chain coming up to finish it. This should be good. I'm finding when there's 3 or 4 or more connected, it's easier to just do 2 at a time. Even if you're using the same jump ring to connect them all, it's easier to make yourself connections simple first, and then if you have to reopen that jump ring to add more, that's easier than trying to put all 4 in at the same time, then having all these pieces flying all over and trying to remember which one goes where. But trial and error. Always make sure you reconnect your jump ring as tightly as possible. Get that right in there. Every time I get confused about which part goes where, I just lay it back down on my little drawing and line all the pieces back up so I'm not confused anymore. These seem to be laying very nicely. I thought I might have to add more jump rings, but I don't think I do. It's basically one jump ring in every link, even if there's 4 strands coming together. And then these last 2 I'm going to reopen just to add each side of the chain and make sure the chain is at a good length. These work better close up to the neck. If you have them hanging much lower down, obviously on a lot of people they're going to get all jumbly, whereas up close on the neck they're going to lay flat and nice on the collarbone or around that area. But you do what works for you. When you have chunkier chain with a lobster clasp, the beauty is you can make it a little bit too long and let the person clasp it wherever they want, so it fits right to however they want to wear it. If you want to go in and double up the jump rings at each link, that would make it much stronger, and that would be great. Might be tricky. You want to make sure you have the jump ring laying parallel with the other. You don't want it to be twisted on an angle, because that could make the link kind of jumble up and not roll as smoothly or lay as flat. Using larger jump rings might make it easier to do that, but I'm going to try that now. With mine, I'm finding it works in some places where there's 2 or 3 links, but where there's 4, I can't get another jump ring in there, and my loops are a little too tight for that. But that's okay. This should be good.